Welcome to the Indie Fantasy Club. Chance Dillon is the author of Mercy, Tears of the Fallen, which earned a 9.2 out of 10 on my indie ranking scale. So one of the high scorers, Ruby Award winners of 2025. And so if you haven't checked out that review, be sure to do so. I'll leave a link in the video description below that you can check out. It's a very complicated book, very Malazan style-esque, if you like that type of thing, character driven, if you like those things in your book. And the second book in his series, Ill is the Fate, is planning to be released in March. Keep an eye out for that. Did I get that right, Chance, just to make
Yeah,
sure?
yeah.
Okay.
End of
All right.
March is right now. Everything's lining up deadline wise in terms of it getting out and getting released, even physically. But in terms of me being able to get like proof copies and make sure everything's good before March 31st, that's a little bit more of a tall task. So digitally, I know for sure it's going to be released at that time. But I probably will want to run of hardcovers and paperbacks like in my hands before I actually make them available to the public.
Cool. Sounds good.
But
I just
yeah,
wanted to make sure that I wasn't too over promising on your
no,
publishing
yeah,
schedule.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
and then so yeah, that's a little bit about Chance. Obviously, we're going to learn a lot more and dive more into his background, his skill set, and his books. So without further ado, thanks so much for joining us, Chance. Really appreciate it.
yeah, man. Yeah, man. I'm when you put up that hidden gem award, I was like, holy heck, this is sick. I'm like working with my sister on getting like these. I thank you, by the way. I think first of all, I love what you're doing with the Indie Fantasy Club.
Thank you.
I'm gonna have my sister try and get that on my website because I mean it fits perfectly. If you look at the spine of the book, you have the numerals for what volume it is, and it's like it looks very similar to that hidden gem logo,
Nice.
which again I really like because it fits the aesthetic of the website perfectly. And also it's really cool to be acknowledged. I think I don't know. I didn't know what to expect coming into the indie writing space, but having some sort of any sort of person, anybody read the book and give it some sort of credential, it feels very rewarding. Especially because I just wasn't expecting it, you know.
Right.
And when you sent me that out of the blue, I was like, holy heck, this is awesome.
Well, I'm glad you liked it. It was something that I was thinking about as I was trying to think about like how do I give credit to the best books of the year, right? Since I've really only been doing BookTube for a year now. So I just think that, like you said, I don't think that indie authors really get credit enough or get recognition enough for these incredible stories that are being put out there. And so I just wanted to do my small contribution to the actual authors out there putting in the work of these incredible stories that we get to read. So
No, it's big, man. It's very, very big. And your YouTube channel is actually really cool too. Um, I've I've like scrolled through and watched videos before you even read my book. And yeah, I do like your setting. I like how the background upgrade happens over time. I think it's sick. Yeah, no, I love it.
appreciate it, man. Yeah, and it's I like the community we're building. And like I said, you know that the reviews that I give are honest, and that if you get a 9 out of 10 on my scale, it's sincere because I have reviewed books that haven't really worked for me. This one very easily could have been one that hadn't worked for me. Like it
Yep.
hit me right at the perfect time. Like I am usually not a Malazan reader. Like I'm afraid of books that are complicated. They intimidate me. And so if I hadn't had a lineup of such like hand-holding books right before yours, I, it just was a perfect storm for me to be like, yes, I want to
Thank
sink my
goodness.
teeth into this, and I just loved it. So
Yeah.
so yeah, I'm really glad that it hit me just right at the perfect time. So
Sweet.
and then for the Indie Fantasy Club people that are watching this, I just want to let you know that we're still going to be doing a book market interview. So I am going to be coloring a bookmark throughout this, but it's going to be a little bit different than my normal interviews that I've done. That's just because Chance here has somewhat made the rounds, I would say, in the interview circuit. I've seen several conversations that he had with other booktubers, at least 9 that I could count. So I figured we'd focus more on the marketing side because
Sure.
I think Chance has done an excellent job marketing Tears of the Fallen and really honing in on a strategy that I think many indie authors can learn from. So just kind of on that note, I wanted to start with your outreach strategy, talking
Mhm.
about, getting interviews with people. You were featured, like I said, in at least nine that I could find. I don't know if there were more, but
I
maybe
think there
there
were.
was. But
Yeah.
can you just walk us through your mindset and how you approached kind of reaching out for these and landing these types of conversations?
Yeah, sure. When it came to having these conversations. So let me actually go back to the like sort of the inception of Mercy as a whole. It started with like a tabletop game
Okay.
and designing that and working with other people. I was in the Navy at the time, and somebody introduced me to Dungeons and Dragons, played a lot with that, and really put together sort of a world in which I needed to explore. And I also put together like a whole character sheet that really uh, it was begging for a world for the story to be told in. And so when I set out to write the story, I knew at some point I was going to have. I knew that I was intending on publishing, whether it was through traditional means or indie. I was like, this book is going to get out there. The story needs to be told. It's a story I love. It's a story I'm passionate about. It needs to be told. So I was like, if I can get one person to read my book, just one, then I would be not satisfied, but I would be happy. I'd be happy if one person read my book. So I went with a single reader in mind, and it turns out that that single reader was me. And it just so happens that I have really good taste, I guess. No,
That helps,
yeah, it does.
liking your
It
own
does help.
writing helps.
Yeah, and you know what? When you first set out to write, you have a lot of people. I was doing a lot of my own research, studying on my own, and there's a lot of stuff out there like write short fiction. Don't shoot too big, and that sort of thing can muddy a vision. If you're somebody who has a story that needs to be told, just tell it. And from there you'll be able to find people who will get something out of it. I think we all benefit from having our own experiences and bringing them to stories. And so getting these conversations, it was really from the very beginning. It really did start with me producing my own booktube content, and developing some credibility as a reader, right? People understood what my taste was as a reader. And when I first set out to write to do my booktube channel, I was like, okay, well, I binge watched Fallout, the first season of Fallout, in like a day, actually. And I had never done that with a TV show. And then it got me to thinking, okay, what five books would I bring with me in an apocalypse? And then so I was like, I put out a video talking about that. I put out, I think my second video was talking about Sun Eater and Red Rising, about how they should both be appreciated. I think I was up to the end of Morningstar at the time with Red Rising. And then in my third video, I was like, you know what? I feel like I'm feeling authentic talking about my reading experience, but I also like have this big part of me that's writing. And if I'm not sharing that, it's sort of like keeping a part of inauthenticity
Hmm.
by not doing that. And so I wanted to share that. I wanted to bring it out. And then I decided to start doing writing updates in every video, after talking about my reading, clarify the split between the two. This is me reading, this is me writing, two different hats. I want you guys to be aware. If you're here just for the reading, I didn't want to drag you along for the writing. Eventually, obviously, my reading got slower, my writing got faster, and so it sort of bobbled into its own thing. And now the journey's sort of very very much split in a more 50-50 sense, if not probably more in the writing facet now. But I did want to. My intention when setting out to make a booktube channel was, I am an author. I am a writer. This is what I do. And as a writer, I voraciously read. Yes. Also, I'm an author. Period. And that was my focus with content creation. Is sort of getting rid of the veil. And I think now, especially because we live in an age of AI, reader trust is more important to build, I think, than ever. People want to know there's a human being behind the work that they're reading and then they're investing in. And so for me, I was like, okay, if I take away the veil that is writing and express, like, this is my word count for this week. I added this many words. If I'm in the editing phase, how many I cut. Where am I in the process for somebody to know if they find this? I want them to be able to easily identify, where I'm at. And then in that process, I'm also a consumer of BookTube. And so I was watching a lot of channels, commenting on videos. I think that's also a big part, like finding things that I found people in this niche, and you have too, who love the same things that we love. And it's so easy to connect with these people because we all love the same thing.
Hmm.
And so for me, it was just simply getting in the comments, communicating, and eventually I'm a part of this Discord as well, the Book Street Boys. Shout out to the Book Street Boys. And they are everyone in that community is super kind. And generally, I think booktube and fantasy and sci-fi and horror and the entire community has been so warm and welcoming. And just the I think everybody wants to be a rising tide. Everybody wants to lift all of the ships. And so I was fortunate to effectively, I want to say work my way into the circle, but to be a part of the circle. And I think everybody who is in the comments is a part of that circle. And I think that's what's so actually unique about this community. If somebody has a project that they're authentically sharing, I think people are so willing to give them a platform to speak about it. And I was so fortunate to meet so many people who were willing to bring me on for these conversations. And really, it did start with outreach in the comments, like, "Hey, let's get on, let's read a book together." Like, even like genuinely, like, I'm not even going to talk to you about my book because at some point I'll get there. But right now, I just really want to, like, if we're reading the same book, let's read and then let's have a conversation.
Yeah.
Um, and that was a big part of where it started for me. So in terms of that aspect of my outreach, it really, and going back to the very beginning of um, I want a single reader to read my book. And then it was finding people who like the same things that I like. And as it turns out, I like my own book. And so if me and readers like a bunch of the same books, then it would go to show that maybe they'll like mine. And then it was about having a professional package, being a professional, making sure that the book is in a place that if people pick it up, they wouldn't know the difference between my book and a book that was put through a traditional publishing wave. I wanted to do about as much as I possibly could to eliminate any of the which you made a video about this, talking about the classic pitfalls of independent publishing.
Yep.
And so I wanted to make something that raised the standard of what an indie published book should be. All to say, by the way, I completely understand that people don't have the means to put things through editing. I think I always would say, and maybe this, I wouldn't consider this advice, but I would say save up to pay for each professional process along that route, and maybe continue writing. If it's a series, write the next book and just like take your time.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard Ryan Cahill say this too. It's like you're not in a rush. Nobody knew I existed really.
Yes.
And so you can kind of just keep going and going and going until you're in a place where you have the means to pay for the process to get you to where you're publishing. Now, that said, if somebody's so excited and you want to get your book out there, by all means, there's nothing wrong with that. If that's your prerogative, fine. I just knew that I wanted to put something out into the world and give it the justice that the story deserved.
Yep.
Give it the package I know it needs, and I know it desires about as much as I do. Like, I wanted to look at something and be totally proud with no doubt, and never look back. I wanted it to be in the reader's hands and for them to take it. And now the story gets its own legs through the person bringing their experiences to the story. Sorry, that was a very long-winded answer.
Well,
You asked a very simple question.
you touched on a bunch of great points. Like, one, being authentic with your audience. I
Yep.
think that's huge. And I think that comes through not only with your writing, but you were genuinely connecting with people. So it makes sense that that's a natural transition into let's have a conversation.
Yeah.
I think I've seen that a lot with people who interact in my community as well. Like, I have like people who are constantly interacting in the comments, who are part
Yep.
of the Discord, that like, if they're like wanting to do an interview, it'd be easy to jump into that next step because I already feel like I have, I guess, a parasocial relationship, not really a,
Mhm.
you kind of get to know these people through comments and stuff. But I do think that does add, get your foot in the door just by doing those simple things of like consuming content, finding people who are on the same page as you, who like the same types of things. So I actually do think that is very insightful. I've seen several authors who do it well so far, at least with my channel. So it's nice to see that that's kind of the process that you took kind of on your journey as well.
Yeah, it's important. Like the authenticity and the genuinity, like that part of it is so important. Like, genuinely, like if you're going to reach out to somebody, know that the story that you're writing is going to match their taste. And I know that that's so hard to identify, but look up your comps. like research your comp titles and find people that are talking about those titles, because you guys like those titles together, both you and that person, presumably. Obviously, like if they have a video talking crap about the product, maybe maybe they wouldn't like it so much. But be aware, like people, and also there's a fine line between, you could pitch it, that's fine. Don't be embarrassed to like throw your story out there. At a certain point, if someone's resistant to it, don't expect. And also, like, by the way, this goes, I sent my books out, my advanced reader copy, physical arcs, out to a bunch of people. And my expectation was never, you're going to read this right away and you're going to give me a review and then I'm going to blow up. Like, that's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
If it's on your shelf and it's calling to you, which is also goes back to the package, right? Your
Yep.
cover, your spine, the formatting, your quote unquote pitch of the story, all that is a part of the package that's on the shelf for the reader. And if every day they get home and they look at the shelf and they see that book and they're like, oh man, that one keeps like, it catches my eye, I kind of want to read that one. Just think about that. And if they get to it, they get to it. If they never get to it, they never get to it. And there's nothing we can do about
Yeah,
it.
that's a big one. Like for me, I always say that I'm open to submissions because I want to try and give everyone an opportunity to have their books read.
Yeah.
Like you said, like one of the biggest things that indie authors want is just someone to read their book. So I'm always happy to be that person when I can. Now, that being said, I have like 150 submissions at this point.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
becoming harder and harder to get to everyone. So I'm getting better at like moving through my TBRs quickly and identifying issues, faster if that's the case. But I think that's a good mindset to have of like, let's throw these out there, and if it gets to it, it gets to it. Covers are important, like you said, having that appeal, having the package, and just not really having expectations for timelines. But since you brought up timelines, I do want to talk about um, the your strategy for managing your timelines of your release. Like
Mhm.
when did you finish your story versus when did you start your marketing efforts? Were you editing your book and you're like, okay, since I'm editing this, now let's start marketing and I have 6 months until I publish? Like walk us through like your thinking behind the timeline of like when do you start marketing? Because I think that applies to like sending out arcs and doing a lot of these other initiatives.
Yeah.
So give us an idea of kind of your process for that.
Um, okay, so this one's a little complicated because initially me sharing on BookTube about my writing, it was, the intention wasn't, okay, this is marketing, although I'm sure it could be perceived that way. The intention was, I'm just genuinely going to like share this. And if one day I share my story and someone goes back to all of my videos that I posted in the time that I was working on my drafts for book two or my editing for book one, they can see that.
Yeah.
And at least I'm sharing it. At least it's out there and it's transparent and people will be able to find it. When it comes to marketing and actually getting that information out there to people, I really started with the book cover of book one. That was probably the first thing I think that I really sent out into the ether. Was sharing the book cover on social media. That was I think the end of 2024. I wrote the book in April of 23, which is crazy. How that actually isn't that far away.
I know time flies.
It's flies. And then I ran through it like 7 or 8 times by myself, shared it with some friends, just kind of got like relative feedback on it. And then I sat on it for like 6 to 8 months. And while I sat on it for 6 to 8 months, I was writing the second book because my goal is it's technically a 4 volume duology. Books one and two are their own story. And the goal is eventually to package them in an omnibus. It's an easier sell to sell a 180,000 word book for book one instead of a 360,000 word book with a whole book. So I packaged them separately, and then books three and four will be the same way, as a second arc of the story. And so when I first set out to market, I felt like having the whole story, the first arc of the story, at least complete in my head was important before I really started sharing. And book two's draft had finished, its first rough draft, and the ugly first draft. And and I was like, okay, I'm going to. And during that time, in the very beginning, I was querying as well. Probably shot letters to like 8 agents, not that many, 8 or 9. Um, I think less than 10. I think for book one, I got maybe like 2 or 3 no's, and then the rest were just no answers. So I was like, okay. And I had contacted Dave Butler, my developmental editor, um, before I started querying, and I was like, hey, what do you charge for developmental editing? We went back and forth. I knew that he was working on the Disquiet Gods, the Sun Eater book, and he's an author in his own right. And he has tons of experience in the field. Christopher Rocchios talked glowingly about him. So I was like, okay, let me see if I can find this guy to freelance. Found him, contacted him. I was like, hey man, I'm going to try querying. He's like, cool, good luck. Hope you have success. And then didn't work out. So 8 months later, I was like, hey, I want to developmental edit book one. At that time, I had developed the means through coming home from the Navy and working at my I'll say old job is still my current job, and I love also doing that, fortunately. And so at that point in the developmental editing phase, I wanted to start sharing, and so that's when I started presenting the cover. That's when I
Okay.
started finding artists for. At the time, I didn't even know they were going to be interior art pieces. I was like, I'm just going to commission these artists and I'm going to throw them out on social media. So I have these like this marketing material. And then I was fortunate to be able to have Abel Montero, who's also an indie author in his own right. Crimson Fire is his book. And he is the best formatter. Obviously, he's the only formatter I've ever worked with, but he's so freaking good and takes it so seriously. Such a professional. And we obviously got to putting putting a bunch of artwork inside of the book. Um, and so I started sharing that as well. And so for the road for me to, I guess, when I decided to share my very first, like the cover of the book, I had been talking about the book already for, man, I don't know. I want to say anywhere between 8 and 12 months, just on my booktube channel in terms of my writing updates and so on and so forth. So the information was out there. Like if somebody was looking for it, they'd be able to find it.
But would you
Um,
say it was those visuals that people connected with? Like that's what kind of drove like attention, or was it more talking about your writing process kind of along the way that would
yeah,
was kind of getting that traction? What would you say?
the traction is definitely when you have something, if you write, if it becomes real, is when people start to take notice. So they see the cover and they're like, oh, they see that I'm sharing that I'm working with Dave Butler, professional editor. They're like, oh, they see I'm working with Grace York, another professional editor. They're like, oh, okay, he's like really putting this thing through the ringer. Oh, and then he has 2 proofreaders. So oh, okay, so he's like really taking this thing seriously. They see the spine through marketing materials. They see the new typography through marketing materials. It's just like a slow build of presenting legitimacy,
Hmm.
and presenting the package that is the story, that is the book. And there was also this thing about when in the querying phase, agents are always like, don't give your comps to like the greatest, biggest fantasy stories of all time. Everybody
Right,
says that. And
right.
I was like, all right, check. And so I like, you write these query letters and there's something sort of inauthentic about that process and just how it
Oh
felt to
yeah.
like try and like, I was like, really what it is I was inspired by Lord of the Rings, the cinematic universe that is Lord of the Rings. I was
Yep.
inspired by the Dune cinematic universe and then eventually Dune the book, and
Well,
Dune
it's
Messiah.
strange because like we read the things that everyone else is reading. We're reading the popular books out there. So
Yeah.
like we're not reading the obscure tiny books a lot of times. So to say like give me a comp that's obscure, why? Like I wrote this because I loved Lord of the Rings, like you said. What's
Yeah.
I have a hard time with that one, but I'm glad that you said that
Yeah,
because
even if I comped Joe Abercrombie in the First Law universe, it's like almost a 20-year-old series. I think it came out
mhm,
in '06, the first book. And
yep.
so if I comped Joe Abercrombie, I'd have to comp Age of Madness. I didn't read Age of Madness yet. I only read First Law. I comped Tad Williams, and because the oh wow, not the Last King of Austenard, Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn. That series was a big influence to me because I had it was one of the first fantasy books I actually picked up. Um, as I was writing, and it really just like it left such a big impression on me. Elden Ring, which is like a video game, and
Yep.
I comp that to people in my quote unquote marketing materials. When I'm speaking, by the way, it's just like the main pitch for my book is what if Aragorn lost everything at the end of the war for the One Ring, and what if Sam had to kill Frodo in order to save Middle Earth? And
Hmm.
if I didn't have that material to share, because by the way, those are the real questions that I asked myself as I was writing. So if I didn't share those things with agents, it's like, well, they don't actually know the story they're getting. But if I
Yep.
share this with an audience who loves fantasy about as much as I do, hopefully, and then I share this Elden Ring world, this very dark fantasy. I also wanted to bring sort of dark fantasy, like that really, not culty, but like that feeling of dark fantasy back into the zeitgeist. That'd be really cool, I think, to be a part of that, to be party to that. And you see Elden Ring getting picked up by A24, which is really cool.
Well, I've seen a lot of that recently from my reading. The things that I've resonated with and enjoyed has surprisingly been a lot of this like dark eldritch style horror. My favorite book of the
Yeah.
year was Rotten Gods, which had a
Mm-hmm.
similar type of like stuff to it. A lot of like just these dark components. So this is, I think, an example of how I think indie and self-publishing kind of leads the way a lot of times with trends, where like traditional publishing has a tendency to really fall behind and then try and catch up. With your book and other books that are like this, I feel like you've really nailed a niche market that is like getting ready to almost have its own genre, almost like a horror
Yeah.
fantasy, component to it. So I do think that you may be ahead of the curve, and that could definitely benefit you down the line
Hopefully.
as you
Yeah.
keep publishing. So
Yeah.
and so I just want to ask on that particular point, we've kind of talked around this a little bit, so I just want to hit it um, specifically with Mercy being such a complicated story. Obviously, you're comparing it to Lord of the Rings. I compared it to Malazan from like a like history perspective. Um, from a messaging perspective, do you feel like having something like a Malazan style structure that's just very throws you into the middle of the world, doesn't explain anything, expects you to just kind of pick up as we go in the middle of instead of getting the beginning of Lord of the Rings, we're getting thrown in at the end of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Um, do you think that that helped your marketing efforts, or was it more of a barrier that you had to overcome to kind of explain what this message is and what this kind of new genre that you're building is?
This is an interesting question because I think Elden Ring's world building was the bigger inspiration to the narrative that I constructed more than Malazan.
Hmm.
Although obviously reading Malazan and seeing what was possible inside of a fantasy world was, I mean, like for I just doubt George R. R. Martin when he was coming up with the lore for Elden Ring hadn't already read Malazan. Like, there's just so many things that I'm starting like I can draw parallels between to see some inspiration that is in Elden Ring and the lore in that universe. But the fact that the world around the character in Elden Ring tells, like, the fallen leaves tell a story, right? And that is, you have this world around the character that's going through it, and that world is really communicating what the story is to the person experiencing the story. And I use that explicitly. Experiencing the story it really is about being thrown into the world, and so I wanted to recreate that narrative feeling of seeing and knowing something is so massive and so expansive, and you're seeing it through the character's eyes. And most of my characters are in their 30s or older when the story begins. Definitely in the first book. And so I have someone in their late teens in the second book, a POV character. But for the most part, we have a lot of like older characters in the first book, and so they've already experienced a lot of what the world is. So for them to share something, I really wanted to avoid as many lordoms as I possibly could. I really wanted the reader, I wanted to like leave breadcrumbs of what things are in the early phases of probably the first third to first half of the book, and then feed and pay off all of those little breadcrumbs that I left in the first part for the reader to feel like, okay, finally they land on their feet. And I think by the end of the book, I achieved that. And now I'm getting test reader feedback for book two. And I like now that the reader is going to be grounded in the story, so they can just now experience what's going on with the characters, because the world has the unveiling, the curtain has been pulled back by the end of book one. That's the goal.
Hmm.
And now you're seeing everything. And then in Elden Ring, when you are on the journey of your character and you go through the world and you start experiencing the story, eventually you hit a point where you go back, and if you were to experience it again, from the very beginning, you can never relive that experience of this massive open world. You have no idea what's going on, and then getting it, and that sort of feeling of just like eventually getting it is the reward that I was chasing when I was writing the story.
I think
Because
you did a great job of that because that's
yeah,
exactly how it felt as I was reading. I'm like, I don't think I'm ever gonna know what's going on in this book. I just
mhm,
am like hoping that it like pays off at the end, and it really does. Like
yeah,
it's a difficult read for like 50%. And then once I got past that 50%, I'm like, okay, I know who these people are. I know what these cultures are doing. Like there's enough, like you said, breadcrumbs that I'm like piecing things together as we go. And so I think that if that was your goal, you absolutely nailed it because I certainly felt that as a reader. So
oh yeah. Yeah, rereadability is big too. And I listen to Steven Erickson talk about this a lot, the author of Malazan, and his books. He does it at such a he does this a master class of just like narrative structure and story and how he's able to present things in such a way that you're like, oh, that mattered, but it like stuck out to you. But you're like, okay, let me just present it to the back of my mind for now, and then eventually you get that payoff. I definitely don't do it to that scale. I think book one. Certainly can feel that way. My goal was by the halfway or 60% mark of book one, you're starting to like tap your toes on the ground, you know.
mhm.
Whereas I didn't necessarily get that experience in Gardens of the Moon. I didn't get that experience, sorry, in Malazan until I got to the end of Dead House Gates. And and the thing that happened in book two for Malazan is such like the actual event that made it all click for me is just this like really deep emotional event. And again, same feeling as going back and experiencing Elden Ring for the first time. You're just like you're so now invested in these characters, and you know the smallest character can have a massive impact, and everybody is the hero of their own story. It's so I feel like it's really rare to meet somebody who is like, I'm the villain, like who thinks that about
Yeah.
themselves. So, and that really was something I wanted to permeate through each character's perspective is that they're the hero, to themselves, and
Mhm.
they hope to the people around them. And if not, they're filled with shame whenever they fall short of that that expectation they have of themselves. Um, and I was like, okay, I think the best thing I could do is try to ground the reader in the emotion, the very human emotion, and of like experiencing shame, of experiencing guilt, of experiencing grief, in the first part of the book, and then in the second part of the book, as the world was sort of thrusting that onto the characters, we start to see them and their perseverance through those things, and their approach to dealing with those things. And now we have a better sense of these characters, and now we have a better sense of the world sort of unraveling around them. And that it was less of a roadblock, uh, because I wanted to tell this story in the way that I like experiencing stories. And so for me, it's like, yeah, I mean, it's not gonna. I sort of accept it's not gonna be for everyone,
Mhm.
and I hold no ill will to somebody that absolutely despises my book, my writing. No ill will. I mean, that's like totally. There are things that I despise and I dislike. That's totally fine. I don't usually go on the internet and comment about it, but that's fine. I actually think, speaking of, I actually do think that like reviews that people leave that people bring up problems if they DNF, those sorts of things on Goodreads are great, by the way. So for everybody out
Dude,
there who's
I
just
just
starting out,
it's so
go ahead.
true. I just read a book where I it had a lower score on my scale. It got ended up with like a 6.5 or something. And people in the comments were like, "This sounds like something I want to read." Like because I was like, "This isn't for me." Like it's very philosophical. The character's very apathetic, so it's hard for me to care. And they're like, "Oh, I want to read that story." Like if
Yeah.
that's what the characters are and that's what it does, like that's resonates with me. So I agree. I've seen it firsthand. Like I know it's people say that, so I wanted to give my own like experience with that because I know a lot of people say like, "Oh, bad reviews are fine." And like as an author, I'm sure people are like, "Is it though?" Like I don't
Yeah.
know if that's true, but I'm here to say that like at least from my limited experience interacting with the community, it does have validity to it.
Oh yeah. I think I think those reviews, and I'm very fortunate that people, although they've put down my book, they've DNF'd it at certain points. They identify the percentage at which they DNF'd it, and they said why. They gave these very long descriptions as to why. And that sort of thing, like you said, it really does help other people identify what is and isn't for them. And I obviously would never want somebody to pick up my book if they feel like they're not going to enjoy it. Don't like put
Yep.
yourself through that. If you see this as a challenge because people are saying it's rather polarizing, that it is a difficult read for X portion of the book. And by the way, people say that for 5% or 30%, it was really difficult. And then it was, people say 40%, 50%, 60%, you know, I get all different numbers all around. And so it does help readers come to the story and be like, and by the way, also properly set expectations. So
Mhm.
often you see these series that are massive, like Empire Sun Eater. You have this series that is, by the way, one of my absolute favorites. And people talk about the first book. They're like, people who come to the first book after hearing what everybody else is saying about the series being this incredible thing. And then they read the first book and they're a little underwhelmed because the expectations were set. It's like, yeah, I mean, by the way, it's a great book. It's so well written and the story is actually so cohesive. And the way that he ties everything in from book one to the very end of the series, now that I finished it. Um, it's amazing. It's actually incredible. And so I do think that bad reviews, although when it comes to a star rating and it does lower your star on Goodreads and Amazon, um, just know that if it's a review that was written and people are giving their thoughts and they're telling you why they came to that conclusion, that's a really big benefit to people coming across your story. I can the I understand why people don't would think that it's a bad thing. And at a certain point, it can be, of course, because if you're scrolling on Amazon and you see 4.x star rating or 3.5 star rating, you might be less likely to actually click that book, unless the package is incredible. And you're like, okay, I'm going to click that book anyway, which goes back to the importance of the package. Like at the end of the day, like
Well,
you need a professional story.
absolutely. And I think that leads into another question where, talking about reviews, I always tell people they need to get as many reviews as possible because the more reviews you get, the more you'll actually get a real average because you're going to get people like if you have 3 reviews and one person doesn't like it, that's going to drag your rating down. Whereas if you have 100, there's going to be at least a handful that don't like it, but you'll
Yeah.
have a handful that love it, and then most will fall somewhere in between. So with that in mind, what was your strategy for getting reviews? Was it sending out a bunch of arcs to people? Like, how did you kind of get the word out and get people to review Tears of the Fallen?
Yeah. Arcs are big. The arc campaign that I did was I had a form. I'm doing this for book two, by the way. I still have a form for advanced reader copies, digital, for people to fill out, and they can get an advanced digital copy of book two by filling it out, and I'll send that out once it's ready. Hopefully by the end of
Is that going to be on your website?
yeah, yeah. My
Okay.
sister's working on getting it over there. I have it on my social media pages.
Okay.
I think my most recent video has it in
That's
the
going to be linked
description.
in the video description. That's what I'm saying. So if you're watching the video, you can click on that link
Yeah.
now and go check that out and get signed up.
Yes.
So just
Yeah.
just wanted to throw that out there. But
Yeah, I think by the time this video is up, they should be rolling out.
okay.
And but that said, people can still fill out the form, and I will still send them out every week. I had a physical art campaign in which I bought a bunch of physical art copies, sent them to friends of mine. Obviously, they're like bloggers who I consider friends. At the time, like maybe less so, and now I consider us friends.
Hmm.
And I had a list of names. I sent out those books. It was it ended up being expensive, but it was sort of worth it.
Yep.
Also, NetGalley. Like people are very scared of NetGalley, um, and I sort of understand why. You pay a fee, you get your book up on their website. You can choose to gatekeep as to whom you approve an arc for book one. I just wanted readers. I was like, there are going to be a bunch of people that find this book that are not going to like it. More people, obviously, through NetGalley didn't like it than finding it through me organically.
Hmm.
That said, going back to what you were saying, getting a number of reviews for your story and being confident in your story, that's a big thing. Like know that your story is good.
Yep.
Um, even if people don't like it, which I know is hard to do. Um, know that people are going to come across it and bring their own experiences, and like which is sort of out of our control. and just get it out there. I think this wisdom was passed from Philip Chase, the author of the Adan trilogy, who's also a very big booktuber, and John Minton of the Talking Story booktube community passed this on to me from Philip Chase, and it was book. And this is, I guess, this would actually be referencing series, especially when it comes to fantasy. Book one is going to get you readers, and then from there on, book two will bring it all back around.
Mm.
So don't be scared to share your book. Don't, especially for me in advanced copies. I was like, okay, I'm gonna put advanced copies up. I had my book up for pre-order for 99 cents for a very long time because I just wanted people to have it in their library because I knew the package was good and I knew the pitch was good. So I'm like, okay, if you're gonna come to this story, whenever you come to it, it's at least ready for you to come to it. It's accessible. You can find it. And I do 99-cent sales now. I think once a month. Usually I'm pulling them off. When I first set out, I was like, oh, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna make it 99 cents. I want everybody to find it. And then I was told by another indie author, is like, that's not a good idea. I was like, you're probably right, because working in an industry where I know like you got to charge what your value is. Yeah, I mean that makes total sense.
That's a heated conversation that I've had with many people about the value versus the building an audience. So that's
Mhm.
actually a debate that I've had with several people because like I have I come from a marketing background. So I'm very much in the camp of like, yes, I understand that you have to like put your money where your mouth is and show that you value your work. And people will be like, oh, this is costs more, so it has to be more valuable. Where I deviate from that is you have to first establish your reputation and your credibility
Yes.
before you can start to like actually do that a little bit more. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where I've fallen into that I guess ideology of yes, eventually you have to charge people what you're worth, but in the beginning, especially starting out, I advocate more for like 99 cents, Kindle Unlimited, like get it in front of as many people as possible.
Yep.
And then once you know that you have a good product and that people like it, then you can obviously, get your money's worth out of all the work that you've done. I want indie authors to make money and to get their bag and all
Yeah.
that. So I'm an advocate for that, but I do think that there has to be credibility first. So,
Yes. Yeah, people need to experience the story to know that it was worth something. And
yep,
if you're the only one that's experienced the story and to you it's worth $100 per copy, other people don't know that. They're not gonna they're not gonna pay that.
yeah,
I'll say that your take is really nuanced, and probably the appropriate take. I think everybody's gonna come to that their own way. I think offering it at 99 cents, running sales, making sure people know that it's accessible and available. You might get, let's say you get 30 sales in a day, from a 99-cent sale that you're running for over a weekend. And let's say 5 of those readers read it over the course of the next month. And then 1 or 2 of those readers leave a review. That's now 2 reviews you didn't have.
hmm
And that would have been harder to come by had you not had that sale.
yeah,
Um, so yes, like I do know the value of my story. Also, it's sort of like I think of it more as giving back to the reading community.
yeah,
It's like here's this thing that's actually very valuable and you can get it for not that much.
yep,
And I know that things can be expensive in the actual world. So if I want to share my story with people who may not have access to it at the regular price of $5.99 as an ebook, let's say they're scrolling, they're like, oh, $5.99 is a bit too much. One day they're going to come to it. They're like, man, it's on my list. I really want to find it. One day they're going to come to it and it's going to be 99 cents and they can know that confidently.
yeah,
And then they'll find it and they'll click it, they'll buy it, they'll read it, and then boom. Now, and if they like it, great. If they don't like it, also great. I mean, they read the book, like,
yep.
or they came to it however they came to it.
They had
Um,
some feelings about it, which is always a good thing. Like
yes. Oh yeah.
getting your reader to experience emotion, even if they don't like it, I think is a win. So,
Big win.
um, I am curious just about, again, because the reason why I say I think you've had such a successful marketing campaign is because I'm not the only one talking about Tears of the Fallen. Like when I'm on Reddit, I see it mentioned all the time. Or like if I mention it in Reddit, people are like, oh, I have this on my bookshelf. I've been meaning to read this. Or, oh, this one's been on my radar. I've seen it in YouTube videos and comments like, oh, yeah, I've heard of this book. I don't see that a ton in the self-publishing space. So the fact that I saw it with your stuff was like a green flag for me. I'm like, okay, this is someone that we can learn from in this community who's doing something right. And it kind of reminded me of like when Ryan Cahill took off, in 2018 or whatever it was, and he was sharing his experiences of what worked for him. So I wanted to get that opportunity for you because I feel like you have it feels similar to me from someone looking from the outside in. And so I want to learn from you what has been your most successful marketing tactic that you've implemented so far? Has it been, ARCs? Has it been, running paid ads, like social media? What's really worked for you that you would I know everyone's different, but like I just want to learn what's worked for you.
Yeah, I think I've heard Ryan Kyle talk about this as well. Um, and I sort of took his cue and ran with it. And by the way, my cover artist is the same that Ryan Cahill used, and I hunted that down. I was like, I need the guy that made these books that everybody's talking about. And then
Okay.
and by the way, the style I wanted to go for also happened to be that sort of like very minimalistic style.
Hmm.
Um, I think mostly just because I knew what sort of cool art direction we could do for it, and I'm very happy with the execution that Stuart Batch did or with the story. The biggest the biggest tool for, and I actually think this funny enough because this works in my other career. um the biggest asset in any quote unquote marketing or advertising is having a good product. That
Yes.
is number one. Invest in the
Very
product.
true.
Invest in the product about as much as you possibly can before it gets to the consumer. Make it as strong, make it as um, powerful. I think often people are scared to write the big thing that they want to write, and they'll write
Yeah.
something that might appeal to another audience because they want to get into the career of writing.
Hmm.
The career of writing is a very, very long road for most people, and you sort of just need to accept that out of the gate. Again, I wrote this when I was in the Navy in 2023 at the time. And then I wrote book two, all still. I think I was in the Navy when I finished book two. No, I might have been had just gotten out of the Navy when I finished book two. Um, but during that entire time, it's like it's not about making money, and it sounds cliche, and of course, like I would love to be a working author, like that would be
Yes.
incredible. And I guess technically I am now. Um, you sort of just have to accept that's not going to be the case, and just assume it's going to be forever. Also, I wanted to write a story that people will pick up in 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years and still get
Mhm.
something out of. My goal was to create a universe like the universes that inspired me. And I'm not saying everybody needs to have that sort of ambitious goal. And then also I attached a professional mindset to it. I need to be a pro. If I'm not a pro about this, then nobody's going to take it seriously and nobody's going to want to read it. Um, and so the focus was I am an author, period. I don't need to be getting paid to be an author. I'm writing the freaking book.
Yep.
Okay. Then it's I need to treat this manuscript with so much care that if somebody comes to it, their complaint is uh, uh, it can't be a period. There's too many periods missing. There's not a comma where a comma needs to be. He misspelled this word. It can't be that. It has to be at the merits of the story.
Yeah.
If you're going to crap on it for some technical stuff, um, I wanted to mitigate that about as much as a person can mitigate it. The cover, which again, this goes back to what Ryan Cahill said about marketing, is the most valuable asset to your marketing
Yep.
because it is going to strike the eye. And people say don't judge a book by its cover. Everybody judges a book by its cover.
I do it at the end of
I
every review video gets judged by the cover. So
yes, exactly. So understand that, and I am not gifted artistically when it comes to drawing and art. My ability to convey art direction to an artist has been well. They might tell you that I'm all over the place, which I am, but eventually we get there, and like I'm very particular.
mhm.
Um, and that maybe is probably just more my lack of comprehension towards actually doing art. Um, but the cover is the number one asset that you have, and then uh, be being authentic, like genuine. It's so silly. Like I do these little videos on social media every week. It's 90 seconds long. And then obviously I do my regular YouTube videos long form, and I talked about my experience. And then I send out a newsletter every week from my website where it's another reflective period for me.
Hmm.
And so it's this like genuine sit down with whoever decides to open that email and read what is going through my mind. Um, and those videos that I make, like in the very beginning when the book came out, I was doing like those hard pitches of what if Aragorn lost everything in the One Ring, that whole deal. Uh, and that's fun for me. I enjoy like holding my lightsaber microphone and talking to a camera. I just enjoy that. That's something that is fun for me. I know that that's not fun for everybody, but there is something there. There's something in the universe to not necessarily get people's attention. There's something that you enjoy doing that will just inherently get people's attention. So
Yep.
just do things that you enjoy, and
Because then
and
you'll
share
enjoy
it.
doing them. Like it's not
Exactly.
as much work to do marketing if you like whatever it is that you're doing as marketing. So I think that's
Yes.
a great thing to mention. So
Yeah, the paid advertisements and like the posts of like that I put up. That fortunately I have my sister who did my whole website. Like she isn't like without her, my presentation wouldn't be as good. By the way, but the website she did, she does most of the things that like the graphics that I post. She'll send me the graphics. I do all the captions, of course, because it's like, again for me. If you go back, like if you really dig on my Instagram, my captions I like just have fun doing. It's sort of like another method of storytelling. And by the way, I think this is important to say. To answer your question, the cover, number one asset for your
okay.
marketing, your cover, your package. Tell people who your editors are. Find editors. A third party to look at your stuff is so big, so important. You are not. You are not. Don't trust your eye when you're first starting out, and
Yes.
maybe never, maybe never trust your eye. There's always something you're going to be missing. You have blind spots. Accept that, and like find people who are going to find those blind spots and tell you blatantly about them.
Hmm.
Also, shoot, what was I going to say? Well, I forgot. All right. Well, there goes
Well,
that thought.
we know now that the cover is the most important. So
Yeah, cover's number
uh
one.
which many people have said, and I agree with, like cover makes such a big impact. Like you want it to not be able to tell the difference between a traditional like book and a indie book. And you mentioned that with just your writing as a whole. And I would agree that your cover does a good job of like, feeling like it was a traditional cover that if it was on a bookshelf, I wouldn't be able to tell that it was, indie published. So
Yeah.
I think that is a good thing to aspire to and to accomplish as you're preparing as an author. So I agree. And then
Yeah.
is there anything that didn't work for you as you were doing marketing? You're like, no, you know what? I'm not going to spend time on this. Like, even if it works for other people, this isn't for me.
It's tough. I think I've been around long enough to just like know myself that I
Mhm.
usually just stay away from those things.
Yeah.
And like being this sort of there's an importance to me saying that I am an author, and that goes to sort of the whole concept of content creation,
Hmm.
which is actually a perfect example of people who are doing things that they enjoy doing. Like you have so many authors who are actually really good and enjoy content creation, and that may mean making a skit. That may mean doing those quick book things with the words on the screen. I am not that. I am not a content creator. Let me be very clear.
Yes.
Although I do create content, so I guess technically I am. I'm not a good content creator, so I just don't do that. I don't take time. My videos, my long form and my 90-second videos, I take one picture for the thumbnail. I take one take to film and record and send it out. And when I do these conversations, I'm not like sitting preparing. This is just who I am.
Yep.
And so that's me. That works for me. That's not going to work for everybody. It may. I think maybe just being authentic and like sharing who you are with people inherently makes people want to share who they are with you.
Yeah.
Um, which is just like a beautiful thing because now you have a whole other connection with another human being, which when it comes to reading and sharing story and being out there, and if you're an author, you're a writer, and you're doing that, I feel like there's sort of this inherent desire to share the story with people. Of course, if you're publishing, like that's the goal. Uh, and it's there's a window that opens to hear other people's stories and to hear their perspective, which is so valuable to hear how people think.
Yeah.
Just how much you can learn from another person's thought process is invaluable. And I actually want to reiterate something that Ryan Cahill said as well, and he talks about hard work. Like if you don't work a day in your life, I've heard him say this probably like in 5 different interviews, but he's right. It's hard work. So
Hmm.
just like accept that what we're doing is hard. Accept that there is actually a fair amount of solitude that goes into writing. I find a lot of joy in that and a lot of catharsis when I'm writing my stories, and I think a lot of people need to understand. Um, it's like really not pretty for such a long time. Like, and it's, to be frank, like I'm not necessarily there now. I'm enjoying it. I'm thoroughly enjoying people telling me about their experiences with my story. I encourage people to reach out in my messages on the Book Street Boys Discord and email, whatever. Send me your experiences with my story because that is awesome. And I get to hear somebody else's perspective about something that I created, which is freaking insane. Um, but it is hard work. It is hard work to get to that place,
Yep.
and that's something that I think is important to remember. And I'm sure you're sort of maybe you. I think definitely you know what this is like. Is in terms of maybe creating something of your own eventually. Um, hopefully, hopefully
Yeah, we'll
that's the
see.
case. Try
We'll
to
see what
sneak
the
one in
future
there.
holds.
Try to sneak one in there. But yeah, no, I think yeah, it's hard work, and I probably veered off a lot from the question you were
No,
asking. Oh,
well, that's the thing.
authenticity.
I agree with you. Like people connect with your personality, and when you are fake and like putting on a show for content, I think that that comes across. Like I want people that if they ever came up to me on the street, they know exactly how I'm going to interact with them because
Yeah,
this is who I am. Like what I do in my videos, a lot of times is a little bit scripted. I'll do like bullet points of things,
sure.
but like
Yeah,
that's pretty much how I talk and how I see the world. And so I think that what you're saying is true. It's a way to connect with people. And a lot of times if they can connect with you, one, they feel more inclined to get your stuff. And two, um, I just feel like they I guess don't expect you to be anything different from what you are
yeah,
on social. Like I know people say like don't meet your heroes or don't meet your celebrities, but like I've seen a lot of people who like, for instance, will go up to Brandon Sanderson and like he's exactly who he is in all of his
yeah.
videos. And I
That
think
doesn't
that's
shock me.
why he's very popular. He's just
Yeah,
always been very authentic. So I think there's a lot of validity to that.
yeah,
Um, and then just my last question to wrap things up.
sure.
I just want to know from for indie authors who want to take themselves seriously and take this path seriously of editing and marketing, what would be the range? Because I don't want you to give away your budget exactly, but what budget would you recommend for indie authors to have in mind as they're
Ooh.
preparing to publish and market and edit? Like what are because I made a whole video about what to expect with publishing, what to expect with editing, what to expect with marketing, but it was a big price range from like it could be $500 to $30,000. You know,
Yeah,
there's a big range there. So I just want to see if you have any insights or recommendations as far as
yeah.
like preparing a budget.
For the package that I presented, and by the way, you could break this up however you want. Like I obviously I think there's a general process that you should follow. For me, it has been writing, especially with book one. It was going through it about as many times as I possibly could until I got to a place where I thought it was ready for an editor and for querying. Um, and I, I'm totally happy to be transparent and share if that's something that would help people. I paid roughly 1,000 for the cover. My dev edits were about 4,000, which I actually think is under market value for the word counts that I was putting out.
Hmm.
Um, my copy edit was sorry, and by the way, I'm going to add this up in my head. So that's 5,000. There's probably another 2,800. We'll say 3,000. So 8,000 for copy edits.
Okay.
Proofread, probably another, let's just say 2,000. So that's 10,000. And you got to spot in like NetGalley, which is 800. You got to spot
Yep.
in all the other art pieces I got, which were like 400 to 600 a pop, which is like three or four of those I did for book one, and then I'm doing more for book two. So it really depends on what you want to do for the package. I'd say baseline 10,000 is probably a safe bet because
Yep.
you can find a good editor, find a good developmental editor, especially if it's your first book. You definitely I use Dave for book two as well. I'm going to use him for book three as well, and And then the copy editor is even more important. Like if you find a dev editor, ask for a referral to a copy editor. I'm sure they know one.
Hmm.
Or there's some services that do dev copy and so on. Gracie York of the York Editing Guild that I use for my copy editing, she's in the midst of book 2 right now. She's finishing up in a few days. She has a whole network that she has for the York Editing Guild that does developmental editing. It does copy editing, proofread. She has the whole thing up and down. And that's great. And then there are people out there who are like so nice and want to help. Uh, you have that alpha reading phase. Like use test readers. If you're in a phase where you've drafted the book, went through it a few times, you're kind of stuck, you don't really know where to go. There are people who are willing to alpha read it, and I know people are scared to share. But there are like I found a bunch on Goodreads.
Hmm.
You got to find some people that you'll know if their feedback is valuable. I did pay for alpha readers, like not much. Like you pay, like they're relatively affordable. But make sure you're finding somebody who's like trusted. Maybe has a website. Maybe has had a review or two of another author who's put it on their page. That'd be great. But test readers for that in that phase, even before you're in developmental editing, is kind of a big deal too, because there are holes that I found in my story that was only made better by these test readers. That was just something that we didn't have to deal with in dev editing because it was dealt with before dev editing.
Yep.
Um, and then yeah, so I think 10,000 is probably a good number for you to. And I know that sounds high, uh, but again, there's so much. If you're writing a series, and in this instance, if we're talking about series, I'll just be frank about that. Just keep writing, just keep
Hmm.
drafting. Put book 1 down until you're ready to have somebody, until you have the money to pay for a developmental editor.
Yep.
And it wouldn't hurt to, like, if you want to save whatever 4 or 5 thousand, 6,000 for your developmental editor, start there and
Yep.
just do that and see where that takes the story.
That's why I
Um,
always advocate for the rapid release strategy, because when you write, like by the time you get to book 2, or depending on how long your series is, you can then go back and be like, wow, like book 1 needs a lot of work, because
mhm.
you now have the biggest thing that you can do is practice writing. And as you practice writing, you get better at writing. So then you can go back and be like, oh yeah, this this doesn't work. This
Yep.
needs a lot of edits. So I agree. I think that making sure that you can go through the process of writing while you're saving for a budget of, let's say, $10,000 as a baseline, you're not going to hurt yourself. In the traditional space, they tell you only write 1 book, and then if it doesn't sell, you need to move on to the next idea. And then if that doesn't sell, you need to move on to the next idea. I disagree with that so passionately.
Me too.
Like I cannot like double down on that enough. Where I'm like, no, if you're passionate about an idea,
Yep.
write that idea,
Yep.
because you love that story, and it will get better as you continue to write it. So
Yeah.
I definitely
Every So I didn't mean to interrupt you. Every
no, go
time,
ahead.
and speaking to that, every time you run through an entire book, like finish drafting before you go back. That's important.
Mhm.
I think every time, let's say you write book 1, you're saving up your money. You write book 2, you're saving up your money. You write book 3, you're saving up your money. Let's say you got the money sort of in the bank right there. You go back to book 1 after having written books 2 and 3, and now you're going to book 1 with this whole new perspective of having
Yep.
already written 2 other freaking books, and
Hmm.
which is so valuable, like so valuable. Um, and then you learn the revision phase, and like I personally enjoy the revising. I find it to be more. It's like problem solving, and I love
Yeah.
problem solving, and it's a part of the process. So I just sort of accept that. I really do enjoy the editing and the revising, because it really does like sort of bring out all the juices that lie in the story.
Hmm.
Yeah, definitely. Just know that you're gonna be if you write chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, but then you go back to chapter 1, you're only going back to chapter 1 with 4 chapters of experience.
Yes,
You
I
could go back to
completely
chapter
agree.
1 with 50 chapters of experience, or you can go back with 4. You make
Exactly.
that
I'm
choice.
such a huge advocate of that. Like you need to move past your work
Mhm.
and be able to get out of that revision cycle. Because sometimes authors just get bogged down, like, oh, but perfectionist mentality, like, oh, I need to tweak this. And
Yeah.
and I think that at a certain point you got to move past it. It's going to be bad. That's what revisions is for. Is once it's bad, then you can go back through and clean it up and make it better. So
Yeah, you can alter your perspective of perfectionism, which I think I sort of did. Um, not every chapter is going to be perfect. So accept that. If you want to make a perfect book, fine. Uh, try your best to write that book, and then go back. And now the thing that you're focusing on, hyper fixating on, that needs to be perfect, is the whole book, not the whole just one chapter.
Yep.
Eventually, maybe you get there if you're in the developmental editing phase, and the developmental editor says, "Hey, man, this chapter needs a little bit more attention." It's like, okay, well, now you can really like hone in on that problem and solve it.
Yep.
But you're not going to really be able to identify that yourself. I think it's a lot harder to identify it yourself. You might be
Absolutely.
able to, but it's like you're still going to come to it with the experience that you just had. You know,
Exactly. So I think these are all great points, and I think we've learned a lot from Chance during this conversation, and it's been super insightful. So I just want to share. Obviously, if you've watched these interviews, I have to keep my hands busy so that I can focus on what's being said. So I always color a bookmark. So this is
that is
Tears of the
gnarly.
Fallen. There you go. That's the
Wow.
the bookmark that we're going
Did
with.
you do that typography?
Well, no, I took it from the cover and then I shrunk it down
Okay,
and put
good.
it
I was gonna say
so,
that's so impressive.
so yeah,
If you,
no,
I mean, either way,
I'm not that skilled. Very much
either way,
I work
so
off the
impressive.
outline, so
That's so
all the
sick.
credit to your cover artist
No,
for
man, that's cool. That's really cool.
but with this being said, the Tears of the Fallen bookmark, I just want to give you a chance to, talk about anything that you're working on, promote any of the stuff that's coming out soon, and
Sure.
just let my community kind of know what to expect from this universe and from you as an author.
Yeah, so I signed a 4 book audiobook deal with Tantor. That was a late summer, early fall. We're still waiting on narrator samples. It's a bit of a process. I sort of should have expected that when I first learned about it. But so we're waiting on that. No hard date on the first audiobook, but book 2 comes out March 31st. Ill is the Fate, to finish up the very first arc of the Mercy series. And I have test reader feedback right now, and things are I'm like actually blown away. Sort of by the test feeder feedback. The test feeder feedback for book 2 versus the test feeder feedback for book 1, significantly different, and I think that's a good thing. Hopefully, and I'm very very excited to share it with everybody. And then there's some. I did announce that I'm doing launch editions. I haven't announced who I'm doing them through. I still can't, because that's not ironed in. But we are doing a special edition of books 1 and 2 at launch. They're supposed to be available at launch. I'm doing alternate covers. One of the alternate covers was released. I did Andrew Molesky. His art is incredible. Also, my standard edition has a different naked hardback art piece that is highlighted, which is Robert Chotia, which I'm still using for a lot of my artwork. Sorry, I'm digressing, or I'm going off on a tangent.
There's no tangents in this section because you get to say whatever you want. You
Yeah,
have
yeah, yeah.
the floor. There are no tangents.
The special editions that we're doing is just the naked hardcover. I don't expect there to be a dust jacket, but we are going to have either gold or red foil typography. That's the goal.
Ooh,
With
nice.
2 whole new covers and hopefully full color interior, because I do have artwork in the standard hardback, but it's
I
all
love
black and
that.
white. So the goal is to make it all that same artwork in the interior. I'm going to hopefully present full color to everybody for the first time. And then those launch editions from here on out hopefully will be available at each launch for books 3 and books 4.
Very
For
cool.
people who missed first printings, would probably, my goal is to hopefully have people who got first printings of books 1 and 2 to have priority on first printings of book 3. And then we would just do another run with bundles for books 1, 2, and 3 for a second printing. When the launch of that book comes. So that's just like the goal of the special edition situation. I'm really really freaking excited for, because even though I am doing the art direction and it's not like a company actually like taking over and doing it themselves, it's just fun. It's just really
Yeah.
cool. It's nice. I'm fortunate that this isn't something that needs to be kickstarted, and it's something that I can sort of just like on a whim do. But I've been in my regular career field for over 10 years now, so my value in that field has gone fortunately up. That said, there's a lot of stuff in the works. There are some artists I've been in contact with for something maybe for Kickstarter in the future. But that also isn't ironed in, because I have to leave sort of room to maneuver in there
Mhm.
when it comes to special editions, because I don't know where those conversations are going to go, and
Yep.
there's some really good hopes there. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I'm really freaking excited. Let's just say that.
Well, I feel like we could have summed up the entire marketing conversation just in that last little snippet of like what you're planning to do with all these different versions and covers. Like it's a good insight into how your mind works and how it has such a good wiring for how do we create value? How do I make this a good experience for the reader? Like, I love what you're doing and how you approach it. And I think it is because you value your work and you love what you've done in the story that you've created. So I do think that that is probably why it's such a core component of everything that we've talked about here today. So I'm glad that we got to get that last little snippet from you to hear
Yeah,
what's coming
yeah,
up, to
yeah,
to really see the marketing in action.
yeah. I'm addicted to obviously I'm addicted to special edition books, so I wanted to sort of get ahead and create something that we can all sort of commemorate at launch going forward. Now that we have sort of enough people that are interested in the story, I think honestly, I don't. I probably would have done this anyway. If 10 people read it, I'd be like, I would have different means of. I would have to go down a different avenue because I wouldn't have had access to the avenue that I
You're gonna
now
have
have
to take
access
out a
to.
loan and
Yeah, I
yeah,
probably I'm just obsessed with I'm obsessed with this story, obviously, and I'm obsessed with art and fantasy and like this is my favorite stuff. So
yeah.
I want to I'm like if any cool way that I can share it and also selfishly get myself my own bundle, obviously that's something that I think is going to be really fun to do. So
Love
yeah,
it. So, yeah, thanks so much, Chance. I really appreciated being able to talk to you today. Like I said at the beginning of the video, if you made it all the way to the end, I'm going to link to Chance's socials in the video description below. So I'll link to his YouTube, his other socials, his website, as well as where you can pick up a copy of Mercy, Tears of the Fallen, as well as Ill of the Fate. So if you're interested in any of that, be sure to check out those links. And yeah, thanks so much, Chance. I appreciate you joining me today.
totally, man. I'm very grateful that you had me on.